prior to that, he was a general counsel of the Department of Defense, general counsel of the Department of the Air Force, and an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. He is co-chair of the Board of Trustees of Columbia University and on the Board of Directors of MetLife and the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. Johnson previously served on the Board of Directors of Lockheed Martin, U.S. Steel, PG&E, and the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a regular commentator on the news. You'll see him on NBC's Meet the Press, NBC's and MSNBC's Morning Joe, Fox and Friends, CNN, and more. For much of his career—
How many people do Morning Joe and Fox and Friends?
You noticed that.
For much of his career, Johnson was actually a trial attorney in private practice with the law firm Paul Weiss, and he is also a fellow in the American College of Trial Lawyers, a wonderful organization. Johnson retired from Paul Weiss in June 2025. Johnson is a graduate of Morehouse College and Columbia Law School and the recipient of 13 honorary degrees. He has debated numerous times at the Oxford and Cambridge Unions in England and is an honorary life member of the Cambridge Union. Johnson is a 2024 recipient of the Gold Medal, the New York State Bar Association's highest honor, a 2024 recipient of the National Law Journal's Lifetime Achievement Award. You see, I was gonna shortcut this, but I thought, how can I leave all this out? A 2022 recipient of the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, a 2021 recipient of the American Lawyers Lifetime Achievement Award as, quote, an American statesman who devoted his career to the public interest, and a 2018 recipient of the Ronald Reagan Peace Through Strength Award, presented at the Reagan Presidential Library for, quote, contributing greatly to the defense of our nation and guiding us through turbulent times with courage and wisdom. Thank you, Secretary Johnson.
Great. With that wind up, I would just sit down. So the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, she can't seem to stay out of the news. There was a report yesterday that she's buying 2 new Gulfstream 5s at the cost of $200 million. You see her TSA video at the airports every once in a while.
Not ours.
How many of you know who Donald Trump's first Secretary of Homeland Security was? Anybody here know? Yes, ma'am.
From the first term?
What's that?
In the first term?
In the first term, yes.
He's a little short man.
Little short man.
And I only know exactly who he is
A little
because he
short
wanted
man.
to rescind DACA, and I was a DACA recipient at the time.
Okay.
Johnson? No, it wasn't Johnson. No.
Okay, a little short man. All right. Donald Trump's first Secretary of Homeland Security was me. A great trivia question.
But you expanded DACA.
On January 20, 2017, I got the short straw, second time, and had to serve as the designated survivor. I had a fantasy about how I was going to leave office on January 20, 2017. I knew I was not going to stay, no matter whether Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump won. And I had a countdown app on my phone that counted down the days, hours, minutes, seconds until January 20, 2017 at noon. At the stroke of noon on that day, I was going to push back from my desk at DHS headquarters in Washington. I was going to wave goodbye to my Secret Service detail, hop in my own car, drive up 95 in the New Jersey Turnpike to our permanent home in Montclair, New Jersey, and then the next morning wake up a normal person. Didn't happen. For the second time, I got tagged to be the designated survivor, which means, you can't have everyone in the presidential line of succession in one place at one time. And all of Obama's cabinet was resigning, which meant there would be no cabinet. There'd be nobody in the presidential line of succession, so I got picked to stay until my successor, General John Kelly, was tall. He's a tall four-star Marine. Oh, you're thinking of Jeff Sessions.
Oh.
Okay. He's a white guy from Alabama.
Short.
And so I had to stay into the Trump administration for 7 hours and 32 minutes until my successor was confirmed, which makes me Donald Trump's first cabinet officer. And the entirety of his cabinet for 7 hours and 32 minutes. Professor, there are law professors out there who said, why didn't you invoke the 22nd Amendment when you had the chance? So this past January, there was no designated survivor. I'm going to talk about this report. In the summer of 2023, the president of the American Bar Association asked me and former federal appellate judge Michael Ludwig to co-chair this task force on American democracy. Given that Judge Ludwig is one of my modern day heroes, after he stepped off the bench, I couldn't say no, I agreed, and we were asked to generate a report on basically how to save our American democracy, and we were given a year to generate this report. This is now summer of 2023. We took 2 years. Like I like to tell young lawyers, I don't need more time, I just need a deadline. So one of the most impressive things I believe about this whole project was the very, very distinguished group of Americans that we assembled to be part of this task force to generate the series of recommendations that I'm about to show you. And these were not just lawyers. So in addition to Judge Ludwig and myself, we had historians, we had former corporate CEOs like Ken Chenault of American Express, Ken Frazier of Merck. We had Richard Gephardt, former leader of the House, Democratic leader of the House of Representatives. We had Professor Jerry Goldfeder, former DC Circuit Judge Thomas Griffith, Richard Haas, Counsel Emeritus of the Council on, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Mark Morial of the National Urban League, Bill Kristol, conservative columnist. It was a very, very bipartisan, nonpartisan group. Maureen O'Connor, former Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court. Tom Rogers, founder of MSNBC. Larry Thompson, former Republican, former Deputy Attorney General, and so forth. And Steve Silverman, who is sitting right here, who was our communications advisor. And we put together this report, which was released on September 10th, 2025. We felt very strongly, I felt very strongly, that we shouldn't just issue a series of recommendations for the moment, and that we should issue a series of recommendations about our democracy that would endure, that would be as relevant a year from now as they are today. And the report was written in nonpartisan terms as best we could. And I wrote the introduction myself. I wrote much of the report myself, but I wrote the introduction because I know from writing government reports that 95% of people who read reports only read the introduction. So you gotta put it all in the introduction. So everything I'm gonna show you are excerpts from the introduction of our report. Our American democracy is under threat. Many believe the rule of law is under threat, and that we are in fact in the midst of a constitutional crisis. Even the current administration must confess that it is determined to push the bounds of legal and constitutional norms. The American electorate voted for this not once, but twice. Why do so many of us want such an extreme, unorthodox brand of leadership? And we talk about the erosion of trust in our democracy over the years by citing the annual survey of Pew Research on trust in government. Remarkably, in 1958, something like 75% of Americans trusted our government to do the right thing almost all the time. That number, depending on how you ask the question now, is somewhere between 2 and 20%. And so we have a restless, impatient American electorate, stoked by false, overheated, and deeply partisan rhetoric from political opportunists, media outlets, and social media. Americans have become disillusioned and distrustful toward institutions of our democracy. That is the undercurrent of what we see in Washington today. And so we add to that, in addition to the mood, many of our political leaders in turn pander to these sentiments to obtain and maintain elective office. Legislators at the federal and state levels represent gerrymandered districts drawn by politicians themselves. This incentivizes office holders to take extreme positions to survive primary challenges from the extreme right or left in party primaries. Something like 400 districts in the 435 represented in the House of Representatives are not competitive districts. Incumbents are fixated with, if you're a Democrat, a challenge from your left. If you're a Republican, a challenge from your right. In a partisan primary, 400 seats are basically safe seats. So one of the things we wanted to tackle is how to re-incentivize political behavior in Washington so that our elected representatives play more to the center, to the moderate center, as opposed to the extreme right or the extreme left. And so that was one of the things that we tackled. But going back to what I said earlier, in developing this report and recommendations over the last 2 years, we ended up taking 2 years because last summer we were in the midst of political turmoil. The attempted assassination of President Trump, Biden drops out, Harris steps in. That was the wrong time to try to issue a report like this in the middle of the firestorm. We wanted the dust to settle. So we said, in developing this report and recommendations over the last 2 years, the task force found itself continually absorbed in one crisis after another, only to find out that our efforts to respond were OBE a week or month later. Therefore, the task force has concluded that the most meaningful recommendations it can deliver are ones that address the factors underlying the current crises. And that's what we tried to do. Recommendation number 1, and this touches on the discussion we had a little earlier, reinvigorate American civics education, specifically in high schools. The more Americans understand about their government, the more trust they will have in their government. The less that Americans understand about their government breeds distrust and suspicion and conspiracy theories. So rededicate our nation to American civic education. The federal government cannot and should not mandate any specific school curriculum or programming. However, it can and should invest in civics education in schools at both the federal and state level through additional monetary assistance. Citizen redistricting commissions. This was something that came to us really through Chief Justice O'Connor of the Ohio Supreme Court. She spearheaded the movement in Ohio. We have a system now where the politicians pick their voters. Through gerrymandering, the voters do not pick the politicians. Having nonpartisan, apolitical citizens write legislative districts for Congress, for state houses, is very popular when you actually put it to the voters. And so there's a movement in this country to do this more. Right now it exists in Arizona, California, Colorado, and Michigan. Have ordinary citizens write legislative districts, not the politicians, for their own benefit. Open nonpartisan primaries, ranked choice voting, fusion voting. We talked about fusion voting earlier. The task force believes states should consider whether 1, 2, or all 3 of the following voting reforms would promote democracy in their particular circumstances. Open nonpartisan primaries where it's come one, come all, and the top 2 or 3 vote getters in that primary go to the general election in November. Ranked choice voting and or fusion voting. As you heard earlier, fusion voting enables a candidate to be on more than just one party line. I grew up with that system in New York State, for example. If you're a Republican and you were popular, you might make the Democratic line, you might make the conservative line, the liberal line. So this is something that many of us grew up with. These measures reward the candidates with the broadest electoral appeal. Depending on the jurisdiction, these changes can be adopted through legislation or a ballot measure. Increasing election worker safety. We're all aware of the 2020 election, the attacks, the threats directed at election workers. We believe that the criminal penalties for interfering with election workers' jobs should be enhanced, and that the Department of Homeland Security can do much itself to improve election security. Increase access to voting, we talked about that earlier, through a number of different means. Improve the cybersecurity of our democratic process. This is something that was a special project of mine. When I was Secretary of DHS, I declared election infrastructure in this country to be critical infrastructure, which the Secretary of DHS has the authority to do. And we recommend a number of measures to improve the cybersecurity of our democratic process. But as was said earlier, we run elections in this country at the state level. So improving the cybersecurity of our election process inevitably means improving it at the state level with federal assistance. Refining the role of the press and social media in promoting our democracy. We encourage news outlets to continue to develop and employ responsible election night reporting practices. Most urgently, we support efforts at the federal level to adopt laws like those in Wisconsin and Arizona that require disclosure of campaign material that includes AI-generated content. We wanted to put forward a series of recommendations without inventing a new wheel, but things that have actually been proposed in legislation. Okay, enhance the obligations of lawyers in our democracy. This was a big section of our report. When you become admitted to the bar, you take an oath in each state. The oath of admission in states tend to vary a bit. And we recommend that in state level oaths, the regulators consider adding a commitment to uphold democracy and the rule of law, and that the ABA, state and local bar associations, state supreme courts, and other state level regulatory bodies provide further guidance concerning the special obligations of lawyers to respect and promote the rule of law, our democracy, the courts, and court orders. We also recommend that we find ways at the federal and state level to curb frivolous election-related lawsuits. The task force also endorsed the June 18, 2024 letter signed by over 100 law school deans committing to a greater focus on the rule of law in law school courses and other offerings. We agree with the goal to train the next generation of lawyers to sustain our constitutional democracy and the rule of law. And finally, we recommended that we promote this concept of disagree better. One of our task force members, retired federal appellate judge Thomas Griffith, has spearheaded and been a strong advocate for disagree better between and among people of different political leanings. Utah Governor Spencer Cox has also been a leader in this effort. This was the report we issued September 10, 2025. It is public. You can go on the ABA website and find it. And our work continues. We built all this terrific momentum. Judge Ludwig and I did a listening tour around the country. We went to a bunch of different states, particularly swing states, to promote democracy. We found a lot of interest in promoting democracy around the country. One of the challenges I think we have, and this room is a departure, one of the challenges I observed is that the people that would tend to show up at our meetings, you get a room full of people, but Professor, they're all my age or your age. This is probably the youngest group of people that I have seen to talk about our democracy, which is good. I want to see kids my kids' age interested in this topic. So we've established, separate and apart from the ABA, now that our ABA project is done, a 501c3 where we'll continue our work. We'll travel the country and promote the importance of maintaining our democracy. I'm done.